Now I want to talk about the different kind of supports. As you can see here, there are a lot of heroes that count as a support. We could see from the position model, it doesn't matter how in which category they are. It depends how much farm they get allocated. To make stuff easier, I want to categorize all these heroes and put them into three kinds. But before we go into those categories, I want to talk about the greedy term. Greedy heroes came up some time ago, like 2 or 3 years ago. The term didn't even exist when you were talking about Dota related stuff. Nowadays, a hero that is called greedy means that he requires certain amounts of farm and or experience to make him work. And the need for the experience and for the farm makes him really vulnerable during the early stages of the game, because it takes time to acquire the farm and experience. So let's move to the greedy supports. Why are greedy supports important? Well, support heroes lead the team through the early stages of the game. And they will also lead their team most of the time through the mid game, if your team doesn't have tempo controllers, for example like an Ember Spirit, which comes online pretty fast. That also means that supports dictate the speed of the game for at least the first 10 to 15 minutes of the game. If you have 2 greedy supports on your team, that tells already a lot. Because as we just said, greedy supports take time to come online, because they need time to farm and they need time to get their levels. So if you pair 2 of those greedy supports in one team, that already means you will have a really slow pace during the early stages of the game. That also means that there are supports that are aggressive and don't need much experience or farm, and these supports can pressure the greedy supports very early on, when greedy supports are not very strong. I want to give you a few examples of greedy supports. Greedy supports are, for example, Chen and Ancient Apparition. Both of them have a thing in common. They both need experience, a lot of experience. If you take a look at Ancient Apparition, her skill set is not the best. She doesn't have a heart disable. And what makes the hero really strong is the ultimate. So you want to get to level 6 as fast as possible. And before you don't reach level 6, you're not very strong compared to other heroes that are already really strong at level 2. Another example for a greedy hero would be Enigma. The only thing Enigma wants to do is farm a core item, for example a mechanism or a blink dagger. And his ultimate also comes online at level 6. So he needs time to get to this stage. As I just said, aggressive supports kind of counter greedy supports. Aggressive support duos usually don't need much time to come online, or aggressive heroes don't need much time to come online. They have huge kill potentials already early on the first few levels, and it allows them to set up ganks or pressure lanes really early on without soaking XP on the lane or with the need to pull creeps. These supports seem kinda strong because they're active from basically the start of the game. When they move from the fountain to the rune, they're already really strong, but defensive supports can counter them. To give you a quick example of aggressive supports, if you have an enchantress, for example, and you take enchant on level 1 and you move into your jungle, you already can enchant a creep 30 seconds into the game, and at 1 minute you will already have 2 of those creeps if you get them. That makes you a very aggressive support, or you have at least the opportunity to be very aggressive. Or for example, a Vengeful Spirit. She comes with a hard disable, is not that slow if you compare it movement speed wise with other heroes. So aggressive supports counter greedy supports, and aggressive supports are countered by defensive supports. After TF3, a playstyle was developed which included 2 defensive supports on your team. These defensive supports are used to save people, and it might allow you to re-engage after you save your teammates. The downside of these support is that they're usually really weak during the laning stage. If I give you a quick example, if you take a look at Omni Knight, he's a really strong defensive support, but if you play dual lane against dual lane, or you have to zone one off laner, you're not really good at doing this, because you have no direct disable. You only have a slow aura that doesn't do damage. Also, your heal requires someone or a unit to be next to your enemy if you want to damage them. So this hero, or most of the defensive supports like Dazzle, are designed to save your teammates and not to play aggressive. I said before that defensive supports counter aggressive supports. Let me tell you why. If you are at the right place at the right time with your defensive support, and the aggressive supports, for example, make a move on your mid lane and you save your mid laner from the gank, you will leave the aggressive supports without any farm and also without the kill. And these supports, the aggressive supports, heavily rely on getting XP and gold from these kills. That's why you pick them, to kill people. So if you're there with a defensive support to save your teammates from aggressive movements, you get an advantage, and that's why defensive supports counter aggressive supports.